Russia and the United States have long operated within carefully defined red lines, invisible boundaries that prevented direct confrontation even during the most dangerous moments of the Cold War. However, a critical line was just crossed, and what makes this moment different is not just the action itself, but the speed and scale of the response now being prepared. What Washington once treated as escalation risk is now being reframed as necessity, and in the space of just a few days, the rules that govern decades of restraint are beginning to fracture. The images you are about to see on your screens capture a shift that analysts have been warning about for months. Satellite footage, thermal signatures, and open-source intelligence all point to one undeniable conclusion. Something fundamental has changed, but that is not the most shocking detail. There are two decisive triggers behind this sudden shift in posture, and both of them suggest that what comes next may redefine global deterrence itself. We will return to those triggers shortly, because to understand their significance, the timeline must first be reconstructed. On March 18, 2026, in the early hours before dawn, a coordinated strike hit a logistics hub located approximately 60 kilometers inside internationally recognized Russian territory near Belgorod Oblast. According to multiple Defense Ministry briefings and corroborated by reports from the Institute for the Study of War, the strike involved long-range precision-guided munitions with characteristics consistent with Western-supplied systems. Within hours, secondary explosions were detected, indicating the destruction of ammunition depots and fuel reserves valued in the tens of millions of dollars. Russian officials immediately labeled the incident a direct escalation involving NATO-backed capabilities, while U.S. officials maintained strategic ambiguity, neither confirming nor denying involvement. The geographic location is not incidental. Belgorod serves as a critical artery feeding operations along the northern front. Disrupting it does not just damage supply chains, it destabilizes operational tempo across multiple axes. This is where the technical dimension becomes essential, because the nature of the strike reveals far more than the location alone. The weapons used exhibited guidance precision within a margin of less than 3 meters, suggesting integration of advanced satellite navigation systems combined with terrain contour matching. Analysts from CSIS have pointed to the likelihood of systems similar to extended-range ATAC-MS or next-generation standoff cruise missiles. These platforms are designed not just for impact, but for penetration through layered air defense systems, including S-300 and S-400 networks. The trajectory data indicates low-altitude ingress, radar evasion profiles, and synchronized multi-vector approach patterns. This is not routine battlefield evolution. This is doctrinal transformation. Because when precision strikes of this caliber begin reaching deeper into previously secure zones, the concept of rear area safety collapses. And when rear areas collapse, the entire structure of modern warfare begins to shift. But that is only the first layer. The second factor lies in what followed immediately after the strike. Within 48 hours, U.S.-European Command elevated readiness levels across multiple installations in Poland, Romania, and the Baltic states. Air patrol frequency increased by nearly 35%. Naval movements in the Mediterranean intensified, and perhaps most significantly, logistics convoys began repositioning advanced air defense assets closer to forward operating zones. This is where the strategic implication begins to unfold. A single strike does not trigger this scale of response unless it is interpreted as a threshold event. And according to defense analysts, this is precisely what has occurred. The United States is no longer calibrating its posture based on hypothetical escalation scenarios. It is reacting to a real-world breach of previously observed limits. The chain of causation becomes clear. Precision strike deep inside Russian territory leads to perceived escalation. Perceived escalation triggers forward deployment adjustments. Forward deployments increase proximity between opposing forces. Increased proximity raises probability of direct engagement. And direct engagement between nuclear-armed states introduces a level of risk that has not been seen in decades. But this is only the operational layer. The geopolitical dimension expands the picture even further. For years, the balance between deterrence and restraint relied on mutual recognition of consequences. However, recent developments suggest that this balance is eroding. According to intelligence briefings referenced in European defense circles, both sides have begun revising their escalation doctrines. The United States is increasingly signaling that certain actions, once considered off-limits, may now fall within acceptable response frameworks. Russia, in turn, has adjusted its nuclear signaling posture, emphasizing tactical deployment scenarios over strategic deterrence alone. This mirrors patterns seen during critical moments of the Cold War, particularly during the late 1970s, when intermediate-range deployments in Europe created unprecedented tension. But there is a key difference. Today's environment is faster, more interconnected, and far less predictable. Economic factors add another layer of complexity. Sanctions have already reshaped trade flows, with global energy markets experiencing volatility not seen since early 2022. Supply chains are adapting, but not stabilizing. According to recent economic assessments, disruptions in Eastern European transit routes could impact up to 12% of regional trade volume. This is not just a military issue, it is a systemic one. And then there is the alliance dynamic. NATO's eastern flank has undergone rapid transformation. With Finland and Sweden fully integrated, the strategic map of Northern Europe has shifted dramatically. The Baltic Sea is now effectively under NATO influence, while the Black Sea remains contested. The addition of new member states has extended the alliance's reach, but it has also increased the number of potential flashpoints. This brings us to the psychological dimension. Behind every movement of troops, every repositioning of equipment, there are decisions being made under immense pressure. Leaders are not just calculating military outcomes, they are weighing political consequences, domestic expectations, and historical legacies. For decision-makers in Washington, the challenge is balancing deterrence with restraint. Appear too weak, and adversaries may push further. Act too aggressively, and escalation may spiral beyond control. For Moscow, the calculus is equally complex. Demonstrating strength is essential, but overextension carries its own risks. And on the ground, the human cost continues to mount. Footage from the region shows soldiers operating in conditions of constant uncertainty. Supply disruptions, communication challenges, and the ever-present threat of long-range strikes create an environment where stability is replaced by unpredictability. These are not abstract scenarios, they are lived realities. Which leads to the most critical question of all: what happens next? The future projection is where uncertainty becomes unavoidable. Current indicators suggest three possible trajectories. The first is controlled escalation, where both sides increase pressure while avoiding direct confrontation. The second is accidental escalation, where miscalculation or misinterpretation leads to unintended engagement. The third is strategic de-escalation, where diplomatic channels reassert control and reset the boundaries that have been crossed. Each path carries its own implications. Controlled escalation may prolong the conflict while increasing global instability. Accidental escalation could trigger rapid and uncontrollable consequences. Strategic de-escalation requires a level of coordination and trust that is currently in short supply. And yet, history shows that even in the most dangerous moments, pathways to stability can emerge. The question is whether those pathways will be recognized in time, because what makes this moment so significant is not just the action that occurred, but the reaction that followed. A line was crossed, yes, but more importantly, the response suggests that the definition of that line has changed. And once definitions change, everything else begins to shift. The world is now entering a phase where the old assumptions no longer apply. Deterrence is being rewritten, boundaries are being tested, and the margin for error is becoming dangerously thin. So what does this mean for the global balance of power? It means that the coming months will not just determine the outcome of a single conflict. They will shape the framework through which future conflicts are understood and managed. The implications extend far beyond any one region, and that is why this moment matters. Because when a critical line is crossed, the question is never just about what happened. It is about what comes next. Share your thoughts on this development in the comments section below. Do you believe this escalation will remain controlled, or are we witnessing the beginning of a much larger shift? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video for more in-depth geopolitical analysis. A line was crossed, but the real story is how the world chooses to respond. Presented by TGN. Thank you for choosing us.